What's up guys, this is Keepers+Archaedas, I'm back on a crappy video. We're back with the... We fixed Uldaman, but then I don't know what happened, but our database is like crashing the server for some reason. Like even with the debugger, it says code like not part of cMaNGOS is causing the crash. Like I don't know what happened, but anyway, like we fixed this so you can see they're all untargetable. I don't know if we'll talk more about it later. So we'll just do this real quick. We don't even have 3 melee classes to activate this. Oh, we were gonna... shield? We literally can't even hold aggro. Against these gorillas. We literally cannot hold aggro, man. And now he's blowing up in everyone's face, man. God damn it. We literally... What? How is he pulling the aggro and the priest isn't even doing anything? Like, we do so little threat that the fucking passive healing... We literally cannot hold aggro, man. So there you go, door opens, keeper's down, so that's fixed. And then we'll just cut, we'll cut it here and then do Archaedas or whatever. Okay, we're back with Archaedas. You can see all these are untargetable and we fixed it, and it's actually so... The fight is so long and hard that like it's barely even doable at 45, and we actually had to change macros because the fight is so long and so hard. But I guess we'll talk about that after.
Who dares awaken Archaedas? Who dares the wrath of the makers?
Like even at 45, the warrior can barely hit him, man. Like it's actually insane. Oh shit! Oh, and then this. Wait for everyone. Now we mana pot and max dips. and pray. Oh, holy shit, we got the sword. The ultra slow sword. But it's a sword, so it's shit. Like, with an axe, at level 45 you can still barely hit it. So if you had a sword, it'd be even worse. Like, it doesn't matter if it does more damage, like you literally can't hit. Who did the most damage? Corruption Death Coil. So I guess we'll talk about the macros here. The warrior... Nothing changed on the warrior. We've got autopod. I think we talk about that in RFD. Oh, you can have like... Should just do... Oh, it has Lua to make it easier to read. Sorry, we're just sort of all over the place. You have Lua to interpret it so that it gives colors and it's easier to read. We have autopod here. I don't know if we talked about that in RFD. But that's just put it on 42 over here. And then when less than 20% use. And because you're putting it on the bar, like, you don't have to check what kind it is. And you can just replace it. Do we talk about the macros specific to here? On the priest, nothing changed, but for this fight in particular, because it's so long and so hard, we changed the tank heal to greater heal, because he doesn't do much damage. But the fight is so long and so hard that the priest just burns all his mana, because flash heal is super inefficient. Oh, we didn't actually calculate. What is it on like, lesser heal is crap, but it's so cheap. Is this even any better? 2.2, no, it's not better per mana. So it's the same thing, except we changed the tank heal to 66%, because greater heal is like 1/3. And he still burns his mana like super quick, and we leave everyone else the same. And then we removed his damage, so he doesn't waste mana fucking smiting. Maybe we should have left Holy Fire. But obviously damage, it's a DPS race, so you kind of need the damage. I don't know, maybe it would have been better without it. Yeah, so that was the change on the priest. Nothing else the same. The second one is just the same thing, but with hex of weakness. So we have like DPS and sunder key. So like 1 is DPS, 2 is sunder, and like classes have gained like sunder type abilities. So like if you're sundering, it means you're fighting something that's going to take longer. So when you're pressing 2, the priest applies hex of weakness. So that's like a sunder thing. And then on the rogue, I can't remember if we talked about it in RFD. We added unit classification to the vanish meme. So like he only vanishes if it's not normal. I think we talked about that in RFD. If it's not normal. Everything else is the same. Oh, we didn't even talk about the targeting. The thing that we figured out in TBC, it's not effective here because the tar is a shittier version of tar. So you can go /tar target and then whatever arca, or target by name as a lure function. But in vanilla, the way it calculates, if it's got more than one option, it does whatever's closest to you, and it doesn't matter if it's dead. Like in TBC, when you do tar, it will prioritize shit that's alive. So as soon as you kill whatever you've targeted, it'll target the next alive thing with the same name, if you're pressing it again, obviously. But in vanilla, when you target something and it's dead, it still keeps targeting that dead thing. So you can't do tar adds and then if tar dead target Archaedas, because you will target one ad. If there was only one ad and only one type of ad, it would be fine. But there's not only lots of ads, but there's different named ads of that small golem type. Like the big boys don't care because you just nuke the boss, but there's custodian, hall shaper, and guardian are the ones in the middle. So if you go tar custodian, they're all earthen. So I thought you could just go tar earthen, and then it would pick anything with earthen, and then if tar is dead, target Archaedas. But what actually happens is, I guess we can show. Oh no, we deleted it, I think. Oh no, it's still here. We thought this would work. Oh no, we changed this because we were playing around with it. So originally we just had target earth, thinking that it'll figure it out because it tries to target the closest name, right? So target earth should have targeted all three of them, right? But what actually happens is it targets the closest match, and if it's dead, it just keeps targeting that. So then even if you've got unit is dead, you target, the closest is dead, so then you target Archaedas, but then there's still ads around him with different names or the same name but alive, because in vanilla 1.12 target doesn't prioritize alive targets. In TBC, target would only target stuff that's alive, so it was fine. But here it's just fucked, so it doesn't work. And that's also probably why on Baron Rivendell, those mobs they don't leave corpses, I don't think. So it's not as big of an issue, but these ones leave corpses. But yeah, like, at the end of the day, the insane complex targeting tech, it doesn't work here because of the way target works in vanilla. It doesn't prioritize alive targets, and it'll just get stuck on corpses. And if there's multiple mobs with different names, it's just a shitty situation as well. There's 3 different types of mobs, so the targeting shit just doesn't work. But so next, the Mage, because we go fire, we spec this improved scorch, which is another Sunder type ability. So we put that on 2. So now we have a new macro, scorch, and all this does is just like Sunder, it just casts scorch. Obviously, because 2 is both Sunder and scorch, and Sunder is the prio, so he'll probably get his scorches up first, and then he'll keep casting scorch while the tanks, you're still trying to get 5 stacks because the tank fucking misses every hit and can't build rage, right? So this typically beats Sunders to 5, and you can detect how many stacks. Actually, I don't know if you can do it in vanilla. I don't think you get the stack count. Like, debuffs in vanilla are fucked, and the code to check debuffs, even in TBC, if you remember, it was fucked, right? It was like this much code to check for like 1 debuff. But I don't think you can check debuff stacks in vanilla because the API is just shittier. So you can't, I don't think you can do cast scorch until it's at 5, then start DPS. I don't think you can do that in vanilla because you don't get the debuff. The function just doesn't have that information in vanilla. I don't think you can do that. So that's the Mage, and everything else is... Oh, and then we made a custom... For this specific fight, a custom Arcane Explosion only, because you don't have time or positioning to do a nice Flame Strike AoE combo, because he summons the middle ring at whatever %, and you've got to kill them quickly, and everyone's like spread out, and like he'll probably miss and it'll take too long, so we make a custom AE only just for that. So it's like a fight specific one. We also made a frost only because we were fighting the dragons that only do frost. They're immune to fire. Obviously, eventually, like BRD with the elementals, you won't be able to be fire. So that's the Mage, and then on the lock, we made a few fight-specific ones. So because you see I have to manually target the golems, we make a no dots key because he's just going to waste mana applying Curse of Wreck and then the dots that don't even tick when you're swapping to that target. So this is the same as a DPS key, just remove all the buffs and dots so that he doesn't waste time doing that. And then your actual DPS key is no drain, because the fight is so long and hard, you don't want to try drain his soul for 10% because it's a boss and you need the damage. So that's 2 on the Sunder key. And we obviously removed it on this... oh no, we actually didn't. Omega, but we were probably pressing 2 the whole time because we couldn't even get Sunders. And then we made a no immolate key, but I don't think we needed to use it. And then everything else is the same. So that was like fight specific macros for this fight because it's so long and so hard. So I think we'll cut it here and then maybe we'll do another segment talking about what was wrong and how we fixed it. But the way we fixed it is quite scuffed. Like the whole thing is like there's a spell, an in-game spell that exists that turns the mobs to stone, making them untargetable and they can't move. But for whatever reason, that spell is not working on mobs when they are spawned. Like mobs cannot cast that spell themselves for whatever reason. It doesn't work. It's broken, and I don't know why. The mobs have the spell. They try to cast it. They get the debuff, but the spell doesn't go off. And obviously they're not frozen or anything, so I'm not sure what the issue is. Because if I cast the spell, I guess we're talking too much about it, but if I cast the spell manually with GM commands, which is Aura, the spell is 10-255. If I do this down the bottom here, I don't know if you can see that. If I had a unit targeted and I do this Aura 1055, it applies that spell that it's supposed to do and it works fine. So the spell works fine if I GM command it, but if the mobs try to cast it themselves, it doesn't work. And I don't know why. So it's weird. It can't be the database because casting the spell manually with GM commands works, but the mobs can't cast it themselves for whatever reason. So what we ended up doing is changing the instance code to manually apply what the spell is supposed to do to the mobs, and you end up with the same result, but it's way more effort. Like, it should just be this spell goes off, the mobs get frozen and untargetable, and that's it. But this spell is broken, but only for the mobs casting it themselves. If you, like, I could not do any fix. Walk in here, turn on GM, select everything, manually do the fucking Aura 255. I could walk in, select everything manually and apply this, and it's the same result. Obviously you just have to do it manually, which is a pain in the ass. So the spell exists and it works, but it doesn't work when the mobs try to cast it themselves, which is just weird. And then when we're trying to apply what the spell is supposed to do manually. It's a bit harder because it's unit flags, but not all the unit flags do what they're supposed to do, and some of them apply. It applies like a flag, but then that flag is like fucked, and you can't unapply it. So it's a kind of a scuffed method, and then for the Archaedas fight only, if you fail the fight, it doesn't reset. You can't do it again because these mobs, like these are asynchronous functions, right? Like you ask the server to do something, it will do it when it has time. So you just send a request, it happens in the future, and you don't have callback functions, which are functions that are called once something happens. So you ask the server to do something, and it will call you back when it's done it. So you don't have that, and when shit dies, it either gets respawned or it walks back to its position, right? And this happens asynchronously, right? Like the server gets told, you failed the fight, respawn the mobs or send them back to the start. It takes time in the future to respawn a mob or for a mob to walk from where it was back to the start. So if you try to apply unit flags when it's in the process of respawning, then whatever you did is gonna happen before it can. So it's gonna try do something before the mobs have finished doing whatever they're doing. So our scuffed fix, while it works, if you fail the fight, it doesn't reset properly because all those guardians, when they get respawned, it's an asynchronous call which takes time, and when you're trying to reset the flags, the mob hasn't finished resetting, so those calls, they don't go off. So you have the same problem, like the mobs are targetable. So the fix works, but it only works on a clean instance the first time. If you get to the fight and fail, it doesn't reset properly, just because shit is asynchronous, and like you need to do asynchronous shit. And like obviously the code is fucking spaghetti, and like it's you know, if you don't like trying to follow inheritance chains, like this is why, I guess we'll talk about it when we talk about the code, but like there's advantages to object-oriented programming, and then there's disadvantages where it's just hard to follow the chain of what functions are permitted by who has what functions, etc, etc. But at the end of the day, when software gets large, you need it. So that's why I've said, like, Grand Theft Auto, like GTA 5, GTA 6 coming up, like it'd be fascinating to see their inheritance class structure, because it would just be ridiculously huge. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, so we'll just cut it, and then I guess we'll talk about the code later. So until then, we're gonna hand in the quests. Oh my god. So we're back, and we're gonna look at the code to the problem with Uldaman. So we're gonna start in the game, right? So the issue is, actually we start with the code, because we're going to follow the chain. Like, I feel like it's like I'm pretty good at explaining things in a way that people with no idea can get some understanding. Like, it's one thing to be like proficient in a technical field, but are you able to explain it in a way that people who have no clue oh, we already have it open. We can just go here. Also, we're also really good at unintentional hilarity. Or maybe it's intentional. So, I guess we can show the folder structure. So, like, this is object-oriented code. So this is code that's designed to have these generic boxes and structure your code so that it's easier to use, understand, and you can make repeatable objects or whatever easily, because obviously in a game like WoW or Grand Theft Auto there's heaps of shit and you're making multiple copies of everything, so you don't want to have to write code every time you come up with something. So like I said ages ago, like, you have like a hierarchy, and as you go down it becomes more specific to the object. So at the top level, this is a massive simplification, but like, you can imagine every object in a 3D game has a XYZ coordinate, right? So every object in the game is going to start from this base object with XYZ. And then, as a simple example, you will have static objects and then objects that can move. So you have base object XYZ, and then you have object that can move or object that is stationary, and it has like information. And in the object can move, you would put stuff like functions that control changing the XYZ coordinate, because that's what movement is, changing the XY coordinate. So like, that's the point of object-oriented code, and that's why I think it would be fascinating to see Grand Theft Auto like 5 or the coming up 6's fucking class structure, because it just must be massive. Like, you know, you've got buildings, trees, objects, cars, pedestrians, traffic lights, NPCs, quest NPCs, non-interactable NPC. You've got so much shit. So it'd just be fascinating to see the class structure. And a quick example here is like, is it entities? Creature. So entities, you have creature. We'll open these in a sec. So in WoW you have creatures. And then, in entities as well, you have unit. And unit is like a bunch of functions, but a creature... Where's creature? Creature has like creature functions to mobs in WoW. But a creature is also a unit, so a creature has both this code and the creature code, and that's where that inheritance thing comes from. And another thing with object oriented is none of this code is run sequentially. If we now finally open something up, you would think, maybe if you don't know anything about coding, that you open this file of code, the code starts here and runs all these lines in a row, right? But in object-oriented code, none of this code is like run sequentially. These are just objects, and your program jumps in and out of places in this code. So you can't look at this code and say, oh, it starts here, and this is the code. Everything in all of these files are just exit and entry points and the code is just jumping between all of these, and your main loop is not in any of these functions. So that can be like confusing if you've never if you've only ever done like interpreted or like simple programming. You might have tried to open one of these things and you just don't understand where it even starts. And sometimes even if you know, it can be hard to find where it starts, and that's something we'll get into later with like object oriented. So, but we're trying to figure out what the problem was, right? So we go to AI, script dev, scripts, Eastern Kill, Uldaman, and you've got these Uldaman scripts. So we'll start with .h. What are .h files? This is just a convention that C++ or C started as well. H files are just like your table of contents, and it's just the names of everything in that class. So this is like a table of contents. You can see it's not very long. And there's no code here that like actually runs. This is just names of stuff. And you don't have to do this, but again, the whole point of this is to make your code easier to read and to share and for people to understand. Because again, it doesn't matter how good you are at programming if no one else can understand your code and you can't work with anyone. Blah blah blah. And it's like, I could get into a side rant about like a big thing these days is like this competitive programming, which is websites like LeetCode, and it's like programming puzzles, and like you can be like good at that, but like that's not really programming software that is used by anyone in the world. Like, it's just a game. So like, if you're good, the best people at competitive programming don't actually work in any companies or sell any sort of software. You know what I like? It's the best LeetCoders are people who spend 100% of the time. They're professional LeetCode competitors. Like, it's just a stupid thing. Like, so like you can be good at LeetCode and it's fun, but it's not really. You don't use any of that shit in actual programming because you don't need to. Like, shit is so powerful. Like, your phone is so, and it's not even about like being inefficient. Like, sure, if you don't know anything, you can be inefficient, but like, what you do when you write software is not fucking. You don't need LeetCode optimization. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just. This is just a side rant, but it is still fun and it's like a challenge. But like the best. I have a real issue with I have a real issue with like university and like people teaching who have never worked in the field or delivered. They've never created a product in their life, yet they're teaching. And it's also kind of like streamers. Streamers literally failed in every aspect of life, have never achieved anything. And people want to listen to someone with no experience or someone who's never delivered a product or fixed anything or done literally anything in their life. Like, it's just weird, man. Like, so like, I don't know, like, it's just, I don't understand it. But so like, you could go back to like uni. Like, people finish a degree, they can't find work, they go back and do a master's or a PhD, and then they end up tutoring and teaching, and they've never actually worked in the field. And then there's so many people doing masters and PhDs that there's no one to market or to guide you, so you end up doing something pointless that no one cares about, or it becomes just another unit like Dumbassology 507 to get your masters, where you didn't even have to do a product, you didn't even have to build anything, you just had to write like a document about some bullshit that no one read, right? Like, it's just bullshit, man. So like, if you have a PhD, like, I actually think you're dumber these days than someone who's actually worked, right, and delivered something, you know? Like, it's tough, right? Like, so that's like the difference between like certain types of knowledge, right? But we still haven't even started talking about it. So we've opened this H file, which is just a table of contents, and we'll see here you've got these enums, which is just you're converting numbers into human recognizable phrases. Because again, computers, everything ones and zeros. People, it's hard for us to understand ones and zeros. So you're converting numbers into words that we understand. And if you look in here, Uldaman.h, we find this spell stoned. 10255. We've mentioned this number before, right? Oh, our server, in the meantime, our server crashed. This is, because we just opened MySQL before, and because we're going to be showing stuff here, and our last session, MySQL crashed, so we lost all the tabs that we had open. And I think it might have corrupted our database, because our server has started crashing. But if you run it with a debugger, so if we're jumping around here, but we've got MySQL. This is MySQL. This is dealing with the database. This is Visual Studio. This is software for programming. You can run the server with a debugger, and the debugger, it runs alongside the program. And if your program crashes and you haven't coded explicit debug stuff, this will catch it and tell you down to the line where the program crashed. Because you can imagine when programs are structured, if we go back to here, to the source game, and open one of these folders entities, when programs are so large and complicated, you've got all these source files, and I just said before that you can't tell where the program starts or like where it is. Like, there's no way you're gonna know where it crashed. So this is where the debugger comes in, and you run software with a debugger, and it'll tell you down to the line where it crashed. And without these tools, when software gets big and complicated, it's really hard to find where it actually crashed, because you can't even find, it's hard to even find where it starts, you know, like, because it's so complicated and the program is jumping through all these objects constantly. So this is where a debugger, but because the server would crash silently with no error and nothing in the log. If we go to like in our binary, it's got logs, but the log, it just crashes, it just stops. It doesn't actually, these errors are not the reason it crashes. It doesn't actually even say anything. But even when you run it with a debugger, the debugger tells us that the program crashed due to code executing outside of the scope of the debugger. So the debugger doesn't even help. And it says that what crashed is mysql, a library, which we don't have a debugger. The debugger is not looking at this. So to get around this whole thing that we're talking about is we were using mysql, it crashed, and I think it corrupted our database because now the server starts crashing for no reason silently, and it's database related. So I don't understand why. Like, none of the code that the program isn't crashing on the line of code that we changed. So I don't know how anything we did could have had an effect. So if we just drop this, we have to start the server again. And then open, we can open up on this. And we just go to Uldaman. So we opened up Uldaman, the H file. We found this spell stoned 255. There's a gm command, aura.aura, which applies, it's a manual cast of a spell, right? So if I select a mob and I do 10255, he gets stoned and he's untargetable and he can't move. I do it to both of these mobs, and I can walk up to them. They can't. They're not aggroing. This is what's supposed to happen, right? When it loads the instance, the mobs are supposed to cast this on themselves. If I turn GM on, I can unaura that spell. And then turn GM off, and the mobs are back to normal, right? So whatever that spell is, it's in the game and it works. But for whatever reason, when the instance tells the mobs to cast it on themselves, it wasn't happening. So then if we go into MySQL, the database, so this is MySQL is your database software. That we've tried to dark theme it a bit, but it's hard with old software that doesn't inherently have color changing. So this is like a scuffed dark theme, otherwise it just flashbangs you, but it makes some things hard to read. So we go to spell template. Oh, I guess we can bring up the we have this bunch of tabs that are like, how do you find stuff for cMaNGOS? So if you go to the GitHub, cMaNGOS, MaNGOS Classic, you have a wiki, and then you go to database structure, and then this has every single database. It's a wiki for each of the database tables, which you can then click on, and then we're going to spell template, and then this shows you the structure and what all of these numbers and columns and rows mean, so you can try to figure out what exactly is happening, right? So like a spell has an ID, category. What's category? Something about cooldown. Dispel flags. What does the spell, what mechanic does it use? Attributes. And this was something that I was getting confused with. So you see these numbers here, 0x. What does that mean, right? Like 0x is hexadecimal, right? And then there's binary. What's binary? I've forgotten what binary is. But in the database, you can see these columns. Proc chance, ID. These are integers, right? Numbers that humans understand, right? So the database stores an integer number that human understands, but in some cases these numbers might be what's called flags. And flags in binary, 1 or 0, yes or no, right? So typically when you compare flags, it's in binary. It's a binary process. But the wiki lists hexadecimal, right? So you've got three types of the same number. So like you've got an integer. The column is an integer in the MySQL program. The wiki is a hexadecimal. And then a binary flag comparison is like binary, right? It's just super confusing. So that's a side rant to a side rant. How many side rants before we get what we want? But so anyway, you've got the spell, right? The spell exists. 10255. And like we went through this. Attributes 272. Like we're trying to understand like why is this spell not working? And then we got to convert 272 to hex. Oh, is this script blocker? 110. If we go back to the fucking attributes, 110. Spell is an ability. Spell does not log. Incredible. Proc chance. Spell visual. Are we just thinking in real time, like, it's just weird that, because again, like I just showed you, you can cast the spell manually. And it works, but when a mob tries to cast it itself, it's not working. But then you have these attribute columns that are all 0. Duration. Effect 6. So if we go to effect, target unit enemy. Effect die sides. Effect mechanic 13. Fuck, where is it? Oh, this table isn't. Effect mechanic. See mechanic 13. Mechanic freeze. So like everything you think should be here is here, but it doesn't work. So we're just showing you this is how you find a spell, and like these are the information, right? So then the next thing is, let's find the mob. Maybe the mob just doesn't have the spell. So you go to creature template. If we go back to the wiki, you've got creature template, and this is what the database for creature template is. So select star where name is Stonekeeper, and so you've got the Stonekeeper. To learn his ID 4857 and other stuff that doesn't matter. And then we check his AI scripts, because creature template is just basic mob info. There's actually 3 different tables for mobs. There's like the mob info, like it's like health, damage, attributes like that. Then you have like another table which is like position and respawn time. And then you've got creature AI scripts, and you've got in creature AI scripts for creature ID 4857, which we just found is Stonekeeper. These are the abilities it has, and you can see Stonekeeper, cast stoned on spawn, cast stoned on reached home, and then his 2 other abilities, trample and self-destruct. So the abilities it should have are here, but they don't work for whatever reason. And like you can check these, the flags are all correct, like event type. It's all there, but it's not working for some reason. And again, we can cast the spell manually, which we just showed before, and it worked. But when the mob tries to do it itself, it's not working. And we don't know why. So that's finding the spell that's causing the problem, and investigating, does it exist, do the mobs have it, blah blah blah. So then we go into the actual instance Uldaman, right? So now we're gonna get, we start looking at code, right? So I guess we'll just jump straight to it because I don't think it matters, but we have code, like this is an object and there's like constructors and destructors and blah blah blah, but we find the code where the creature is created, and this is, you can see this stuff, we've already added stuff here. So there's a switch case. When it creates mobs, depending on what mob number, and remember we have these titles which convert human understandable labels to numbers. In the case of Hall Shaper Custodian, do this. Vault Water Guardian, do this. Stonekeeper, do this. Archaedas, do this. Originally, all of this wasn't there, and there was just this line. And what it would do is it's just adding these mobs' IDs onto a list which is called wardens. And this is just so we have this group of mobs that we remember for later. But so what we edited, because these mobs are not getting stoned, the spell, it's just not working. While we're creating these mobs, we're going to apply manually some stuff. And you can see here, this is the line. We added this to see if this would work. P creature, cast spell. Cast spell on P creature, spell stoned, ignore everything. And even if you add another force of this, it still doesn't work. So then we found on Archaedas it applies this spell freeze animation, and this does work. So when we make these mobs, we now force cast a spell on them when they're created. And then we were playing with different flags, because just because you freeze the animation doesn't mean the mob is actually frozen. This is just a spell that stops them animating, but it doesn't prevent them from doing anything else. So this is where, when you start doing things individually, manually, it gets fucky, right? So then we played around, we found a function called set immobilize states. So like, cause you want to cancel their animation, freeze them, but you also want to make them not able to move. And then we found these other functions, and this goes back to, this is a creature, but it also has unit functions. So you have to find what functions this object has access to. So set a flag immune to player. This means you can't cast spells on it. You can't attack it. You can't cast any spells on it. We played around with set stunned. You can apply a manual stun. Set flag. This is a unit function. A creature is also a unit. Set the flags to uninteractable. You can't click on it. If you can't click on it, you can't interact with it. But that doesn't mean it can't interact with you. And we'll find out that shit just gets fucky, right? Like, set flags immune. The problem with immune is that it's immune to everything, including Archaedas. So Archaedas can't wake him up. Set flag untargetable, same problem. If it's untargetable by Archaedas. And this is where, like, manual setting of flags leads to more problems. Set flag immune to player. So when we create these mobs, we need to make them frozen, not animated, immune to the player, you can't attack it, uninteractable, untargetable, you can't click on it, and it can't take damage from you. And then break. And then the same thing for Vault Water and Guardian, the same thing. And we added new another list because in the fight, like, you have to keep track of different groups of mobs. Like the Custodians and Hall Shapers, he constantly wakes them up through the fight. The Vault Water and the Guardians, the Vault Waters are the big boys in the last, like 20%. The Guardians are the ones in a circle in the middle. So these are different to these ones. So you need to keep track of them. We create a new list, So when we spawn them, we add them to this list, as well as manually setting these flags. And then the stone keepers, they had their own list as well, and we also manually set some flags. And then Archaedas. So this is a function that when creatures are created, we run this stuff. So we're adding monsters to a list to remember specific groups of monsters, and we're manually setting flags and casting a spell on the mob. And obviously the intended spell stoned is broken, and I don't know why, even though it exists. So then we keep going through the code. None of this really matters. Even though the code, it doesn't run sequentially, we're just going to walk through it sequentially, because otherwise it's just way too confusing. So now there's this function, reset the keeper event. So this is when you fail the event, you need to reset it. So there was this already existed, and we added some stuff. So remember that list that we made of the keepers? We use it here. So this is just a complicated for loop, because we're dealing with objects, not just numbers. A normal for loop is like from 1 to 10, do some stuff. Well, this is, while we have a list of objects, go through that list. And these, this is a pointer to an object. So these are more complicated than just variables. So originally all that was here was, if the mob is not alive, then respawn it. And if that spell worked, when the mob walked back or respawned, it should cast stoned on spawn and on reached home, but that's not happening for whatever reason. So we played around, we put a manual call here, cast stoned, and ignore if it already has the buff. It still doesn't work. This still doesn't work. Even though you can manually GM command, and it does work. So then we added what we added above. Cast this spell freeze, which does work. And then this is us playing around with flags, and we found this set of ones that work. So set it immune, set it uninteractable, untargetable, and immune to player. So now we demonstrated the keeper event, it worked. The mobs were uninteractable and untargetable. And this works if you fail it and it resets. But on Archaedas, if you fail it, our scuffed method doesn't reset correctly. Where here it does, but we'll get into that later. So then we created these functions. Reset wardens. So that list of wardens, go through the list. If the mob exists, respawn it and set the flags manually, because that spell stone just doesn't work. So this was a function that gets called when Archaedas resets, but this does not work, and I think it might just be because we're dealing with asynchronous functions. So when a mob gets respawned, but it's weird because it works here. But in the time of a mob respawning, because when you ask the server to respawn a mob, it happens when the server's ready. So respawn the mob and then set these manual flags to freeze it. But for whatever reason it doesn't work. And then we have the same function again, but for the group of guardians. Because again, there's multiple groups of mobs that we have to keep track of. So this is the same thing. For that list of mobs, respawn them and set these flags manually. And then this is another function which we needed because of setting flags manually, like untargetable, means that even Archaedas can't target his own mobs, right? And it breaks the fight. So we have to, when Archaedas is about to wake up these mobs, we have to undo what we just did. So for this list of mobs, unset all the flags that you just did, right? So that Archaedas can cast his spell. Because setting flags manually just breaks everything, because it's a hack fix. And if the spell stoned just worked, it would be fine, but it's broken for whatever reason. We don't know why. So that's something we added. Just before Archaedas is about to enable the inner ring of guardians, you have to unflag them, otherwise he can't actually do his spell. This is stuff that already existed. And then we added this update. This is like a function that gets called every like 5 seconds to update the AI on stuff. And we thought maybe we'll just put that same thing in here, maybe if it's happening more often. So for this list of keepers, apply the spell stoned. This obviously doesn't work. Instead, apply all this other stuff that does work. So periodically updating, go through the list of keepers and set all those flags. Now I'm wondering if we should put I wonder if to fix the reset on Archaedas, we need to do this. We need to do this for the Archaedas mobs. Maybe that's why, because this keeps getting called all the time. Like every 5 seconds, this function gets called. So maybe we need to do it here. Because the reset works for the keepers, but it doesn't work for anything else. And then this function controls when the keepers attack the player. And again, because we're manually setting flags before the keeper, this is the original code here, but we add all this. Before the keeper can attack, you have to disable all those flags that we set to stun it and make it untargetable and unmovable and blah blah blah. Originally it had this, just remove spell stoned, but this doesn't work, which we've repeated 1,000 times, so we have to add all this other bullshit. But yeah, maybe we need to add in here, because this function gets called every 5 seconds. So maybe we need to do that. So that's like a periodic update function. And that's it for instance Uldaman. So then we have and obviously because we added functions and we have H files, we have to add the variables and functions that we created into the H file, but that's like a small thing. H files are just a table of contents for your C files, your objects. So then we go to boss.archaedas.cpp. So this is the boss fight specific code, right? So you've got some enums. So you've got this reset function, and it's an override. So again, remember we're talking about generics. So every boss fight has a reset function, but the reset function for a specific boss fight is going to vary. This is why you have an override. So boss, this is an object of scripted AI. You have a generic class called scripted AI because you have lots of scripted fights, but they're all different, but they do have some things that are similar. For example, a reset function. Every fight has a reset function, but the reset will be different for every fight. So you know you're going to have a reset function, but you're going to override it, you're going to change it for every specific fight. So you know that you're going to have a reset function, but it's going to be different for the very specific fights. So on this fight, the reset function is overridden with the specific information relevant to this fight. This stuff already existed, but we now added this, our new functions, reset wardens and reset guardians. But like we said, this didn't end up working, and I think it's just because we're talking about asynchronous functions. So the functions run, the functions get called when the server is ready to do it. So when you're resetting the fight, when this gets called, the mobs might still be resetting, which means you're trying to do something before it's ready. So this is probably why this doesn't work. And like you've got all these generic functions like that are all overrides, and again, like every fight is going to have reset. It's going to have but when the boss pulls aggro, you know, like this is like when the boss pulls aggro, the boss says something, and every boss has its own specific thing that it says. So this is how override functions work. Bosses say things when they kill you, like Herod, is that all? Is that all? Is that all? So every boss fight, something's going to happen when someone gets killed, right? But it's going to be different for specific mobs. This is just how like override functions are used in object-oriented coding. Just reach home. This is just like when mobs run back to their thing. So this is the periodic update AI function. So this gets called every instance of time that the fight is going on. We tell Archaedas to do shit. So at the start, you know, he wakes up and he says some things. This is where his freeze is disabled and he starts attacking. And then this stuff controls what he does at certain phases, so percentage health. So this is the phase switch where he summons the middle mobs. He wakes up the middle circle of mobs. Because we've set them with custom flags to disable them, to make them untargetable, just before Archaedas does his spell, we need to undo what we did. Otherwise, even Archaedas himself can't target the mobs. So this is the function that we made. So we call that, and then he does the spell Awaken, or he does the Vault, the big boys, depending on his health percentage. So we had to undo all the flags that we did just before he did this, otherwise it breaks. And then here is his constant waking up of mobs. And same thing, but this is constant. And this is where we undo the custom flags that we set. So originally it should just be remove stoned, but stoned is broken, so we have to do all this bullshit to emulate stoned. So that's just his AI, and this is just a function. This function update AI, this just gets called every like few seconds, and he does all his abilities. So that's like how the boss AI is controlled. This is just bullshit. And here is the specific spell that he uses to wake stuff up. And originally it would just be spell stoned, but spell stoned is broken. So to wake him up, we have to remove all the custom flags that we set because it's broken. And then the same thing for Awakened Dwarf. Originally it should just be remove spell stoned, but spell stoned is broken. So we have to remove all the flags of what we set manually. And that's it. So like that's like our hack fix to fix Archaedas. So like we just kind of show like a thought process of like how you like try to figure out why something's broken or whatever. Like obviously this project, this is not my project, I didn't write this code, and it's quite a large project, you know, object-oriented C programs, it's large, it's confusing, it's hard to know what code is where, what's executing when, what functions are available, who can do what. But this is just the essence of object-oriented programming. Like the whole point of it is to structure it so it's not just one file that's like 5 million lines long, and every time you want to do anything you have to write the code again. Whereas when you have this structure, with entities, oh, I need a creature, I just make a creature and then I override stuff for what it looks like, how fast it moves, what sound gets played, etc, etc. So the whole point of object-oriented is not to make better code or faster code. This slows it down, but it makes it easier for us to understand it and to work together, to segment work in a team. Like the good old days, you'd have like the one genius and he just writes everything from scratch. But like in a modern world, that's just not, it's not useful, right? Like as long as you can find someone who'll do that, but like there's not many, you know, like John Carmack is like the one-man army, programming army, do everything from scratch. But there's limits to that. Like when stuff gets so big and you have to do everything from scratch yourself, like there's only so much time, you know, like There's only so much you can do, and like when stuff gets super complicated, you just can't. Like you need help. You need help, and then you need someone who can understand the code as well. So if you did everything yourself and only you understand it, then no one can help you, right? Like so it's just like a paradigm of like software projects. Because yeah, like when I was younger, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be the one-man coding army. But like it doesn't matter, man. Like if no one can help you and understand what you're doing, and when stuff gets big and complicated, like you can't do everything yourself, right? And a big thing these days is just libraries, like understanding libraries. So a library is just a collection of functions that someone wrote that you can either get for free, they're giving it away for free, or you have to pay a license. So like these days in programming, it's like understanding libraries and knowing and putting these big puzzle pieces together. You're not just writing everything from scratch, because again, that's the hardest way to do stuff. Like if someone's already done something, just take it and add it, and if you need to change it slightly, but obviously then there's issues like who owns the code. Again, do you have to pay for these functions, blah blah blah, you know, people copying each other's code. These are like modern problems these days, like licensing. But yeah, this was just a long ramble, because I feel like we can understand, like I'm pretty good, I can jump through like 10,000 topics and explain it in a way that like people who have no clue can learn something. Like if you already know this stuff, like this isn't going to be helpful, but that's not really the point, right? Like the point is to collectively gain more knowledge about stuff, and then this can spark an interest, or you can just know more. Like knowledge is power. Like your greatest asset is intelligence and adaptability. But yeah, so that was our hack fix, which it works, but it's not a great fix. But yeah, I don't know why the spell is not working. Like something's interrupting it. But yeah, so yeah, that's us rambling about code. So yeah, until the next time, I guess. Goodbye. What's up, guys? This is Keepers+Archaedas, you know, back to another crappy video. We're just adding to the video because we figured out some stuff, but also SOD has started. Where I was told Onslaught was playing. They privated the Google Doc. Where's the updated Onslaught? It doesn't matter. I saved the Google Doc as HTML, so I still have it. Omega, but so I think we know why the server started crashing. Like, if anyone remembers, like 3 years ago, towards the end of the run, I don't remember if it was Sunken Temple, BRD, or after Zul'Farrak, like the server would stop saving your character's inventory. Like you'd log in and like shit just wasn't, like there were empty slots here. Like they broke something with the database such that there were like corrupted items that couldn't save, and like the database was fucked. Because on this run on group 2 we did like some extra quests, and that's the only difference. And maybe those quest items are bugged and it's crashing the server, because literally the debugger says the program's crashing due to MySQL code outside of cMaNGOS, and the crashing has stopped when I just continued playing normally. So it must be there must be some quests that we did that we didn't do last time that have just bugged items or something. So like when we talk about how like the server goes backwards and like there's just new bugs, like people just like add code without actually testing shit, and we found some more stuff and related to the Uldaman thing, but and there was like a refactor that converted the spell into a script, but I don't think that's the issue. But they were trying to fix something in TBC, but it's unrelated. But so first we'll just do while we were going through the code, we said that our fix, when you fail Archaedas, it doesn't reset properly, because I think when you do this reset, obviously these are asynchronous functions, so like the server does it when it's ready. So when you respawn a mob, you're trying to change the flags before it gets respawned. But we figured out how to fix that, so, and we said it in the video, maybe we need to put it in to these functions. So like there's these update AI functions, which these are called like every few seconds to tell mobs what to do. This controls Archaedas' stuff. So all we did was we put this here. So obviously Archaedas has a flag of what stage he's in, and special and in progress. Like in progress is obviously on aggro, so aggro set him to in progress, and special is apparently it's when the altar gets activated. So if he's not been activated and he's not in progress, call the reset function, which is the function that we made to manually reset the mobs. You know, you get a list of the golems, a list of the... So this only gets called once when reset gets called, but update gets called every few seconds. So by the time the mobs are spawned, they'll be finished doing whatever they're doing and they'll get reset properly. So we'll just demonstrate that. Teleolder. This is how easy it is to run a dungeon when you run your own server. Ready for this? Okay. Oh, I'm in Ogrimmar. Oh, I'm in Telly Yo Jam. Is that? I've never been to Yo Jam. I don't even know what Yo Jam. Fuck. Look up Telly Yo. What? What even is Yo Jam? I don't even know what Yo Jamba is. Back to Ogrimmar. Back to Yo Jamba. Like, it's just fucked up, man. Like, oh, I want to log in and play the game. Oh, I got to spend 18 hours getting there. Oh, but my immersion. Go see Arca. So obviously this is the first time you've done it, so everything's fine. But what would happen is if you enabled him and then fail the fight, the mobs wouldn't be reset and they would be clickable, aggro, and they would aggro on you. And obviously you need 3 characters to fucking turn this on. I don't know if there's a GM command that lets you do it, but... So we just turn him on. And then just pull him over here, kill a couple of these mobs, and then fail the fight. I don't have my broadcast software on, so I can't actually control everyone. Because we're just doing a little test. So we just kill 2 of these, then we put GM on, which makes us untargetable, and the fight resets, everyone walks back, we turn GM off, and we can see these guys go back to being unclickable, untargetable. And then we could start the fight again if we want. Oh, these guys are still on GMR.
Who dares awaken Archaedas? Who dares the wrath of the Makers?
We just fight him for a bit. And he goes back to doing his own thing. So that's that. So that works. So we just turn everyone on GM again. Off, unclickable, untargetable, excelente. So that's just fixing that, because obviously, like asynchronous, like when you start learning programming, like everything happens in a row. Like your program is int main. It's not complicated objects getting created all over the place. You don't have managers, you don't have like event triggers, etc. So like when you start learning programming, your code is literally like it starts here and it runs every line in a row, and like to get to here it has to finish doing this. But when you get onto more complicated stuff, like it becomes asynchronous, so stuff is happening in real time at different times, and when you call a function, you're not running the code now, you're asking the server or whatever's doing the processing, I want you to do this. It adds it to its list of shit to do, and it'll do it when it's ready. And so if you just put code that depends on the result of this right afterwards, this may not have finished by the time you want this to run. And that's where you get into like proper asynchronous function calls with callbacks. So a callback would just be you initially call a function and you supply it with a function that gets called when it's finished what you asked it to do. So I want you to run this, and you run, I'll tell you what to do once you've run it, and it'll call the callback function. So the server will do what you asked it to do and then call the callback function when it's finished. And this is asynchronous is a bigger thing with like online shit obviously, and like website design, because you have a server, you have multiple users doing stuff at the same time. So for like a single player game, it like doesn't really matter, right? But yeah, like that's like a asynchronous programming. So the next thing would be, we found the code where like, because we're trying to understand why does this spell not work? Like when I can manually GM command it and it works, which is weird, right? And we found the function. This is in source game chat level 3. Handle aura command. So this is the function that controls GM commands, and as you can see, it's pretty involved in casting a spell. Like this is not text passing code. This is just spell casting code. So when you call this aura function, it does all of this spell code. And if you compare that to the other thing that we found, which was script, when they converted spell scripts, we found this. So this is source game AI script dev scripts world spell scripts. So this is like, these are spells that are converted into scripts that it like replaces what happens when it usually gets cast. But if you compare, so this is stoned, and if we go at the bottom, register, this is registered as spell stoned, and you can go back in the GitHub and you can look at the changelog history, like when they converted. So like someone was trying to fix something in TBC, so they converted this spell to this script. But I'm not sure if this script does what it's supposed to do, because there's no spell cast here. It just does some manual flag setting, just like we did. But if you compare this code, so it's on apply, like these are overrides. You can go into the spell object, and spell object has these functions on apply. So obviously for specific spells you're replacing stuff. So if you're applying, do this. If you're not applying, do this. And they have this dummy spell, which is, it's supposed to do the opposite of stoned. But if you compare, like this actually has a cast spell, right? Target cast spell. But there's no cast spell here on apply. And if you compare this code to the GM command, this is how much code is to cast an aura on something. Like, I don't even know why you need all this bullshit. It's like checking the spell, some spell flags, like does the spell exist, checking spell flags, creating, I don't know why, but you have to create a temporary spell holder, then cycling through the effects of the spell, create an aura, add that aura to a temp holder, and then finally target, add spell from a holder to the target, and delete the holder. Like, so I don't know, like, do I need to copy all of this code into the stone spell? Because most of the time a spell cast is just target, cast spell, you know what I mean? Like, but just comparing this amount of code, like clearly there's a difference, right? So something's wrong. So I don't know if the spell is just not correctly implemented, or because another thing is, like, what people might not understand, like this is a server emulation, but the client is a Blizzard made client. Like the client is the actual Blizzard client. Like they didn't make this client. So like stuff that Blizzard made is in the client. So you don't have to make everything. Like it's when you set up the server, you extract data from the client. So stuff that Blizzard made is extracted from the client and used. And so you want to cast a spell, it exists in the client. You don't have to program it. So I don't know if in this case there's a bug and the spell is broken and you have to cast it manually, or because of this code difference it's not actually implemented correctly. Like, so I'm not sure, but obviously there's some bug where this works, but whatever the code is that's supposed to cast the spell is not, it doesn't work. So yeah, like that's something we found. And obviously what we've done by setting flags manually, we end up with the intended result. but obviously it's ugly and it's hacky. But like, if shit doesn't work, like, you just gotta make do. And like, it's just another example of like, in big open object-oriented programs, it's hard to tell if, you know, I didn't write this, I'm coming into this as an outsider. It's hard to find shit. Like, even if you know programming, object-orientated is fucking, it's complicated. It's hard to find shit. You don't know the order of shit that's getting triggered. Like, obviously we've talked about like, when the game is running, like, the code doesn't start, it doesn't start at the top and run through the code. The code is jumping in and out of all these files, like, millions of times, literally millions of times a second. So finding like the execution of these things is hard, even if you know programming. Like, when shit gets big and it's object orientated, it's confusing and it's hard. But imagine if this entire program was just one 50 trillion line text file. You know, like, at least object oriented code gives you this structure, right? And that's the whole point, that you group things together. You have generics, you have inheritance of building these puzzle pieces which you're putting together. So like, that's just something we like, we wanna understand why it's broken, obviously, like, but it's like, yeah, like, I don't know, it's just fucked. Like, obviously comparing this to the GM command, there's a massive difference in the amount of code. So yeah, that's just our little add-in. We've fixed the reset of Archaedas. Now that we know that the server crashing is probably just corrupted quest items, like, we could do a full run of Uldaman, but we've already like passed it, and like, none of the, you'd never farm any of the bosses because all the loot is shit. So I don't know. But yeah, so that's just a quick update on Archaedas. So yeah, until next time, bye.